Alright, this is long overdue. So everyone that goes on the zero-carb diet, carnivore diet, complains about bowel movements, and people on keto complain about bowel movements too. So I'm going to try to, as usual in my videos, be all over the place and explain things to people. So there's a bunch of different things you could be doing wrong and a bunch of factors in your diet that can affect this. But one very important thing to keep in mind is that different foods digest at different rates, and that drinking too much water or electrolyte imbalance can cause problems in digestion. So if you fix those two things, you'll have perfect bowel movements. But those two things are very complicated to fix. Not complicated, but you got to think about it. So if you eat a meal that has eggs, cheese, meat, and butter, all of those foods digest at certain rates because their fat composition is different, their protein composition is different, they have different chemical structures and things. They digest differently in the human digestive system. You know, the nutrient difference between those foods causes them to digest at different rates. If you consume foods that digest in different rates at the same time, you'll have a food that should be further in your digestive system stuck with a food that is still digesting. So what ends up happening for most people's diets is the reason they use the bathroom is because food is pushing other food out. And that happens with everyone, but more so when you mix foods. Me, in my case, on a carnivore diet, if I only eat raw red meat, my bowel movements are extremely consistent and small, depending on the volume of food. Another important thing to keep in mind is that these foods digest very slowly in comparison because there's so many nutrients your body can extract from them, and the waste is so small. You could eat, if you eat 4 pounds of steak and then you fast for a week, that bowel movement will probably be a very small percentage, like maybe 5% of the original mass that you ate. It's amazing how well the body can utilize meat. That's another reason. So all these things in combination, how slowly animal foods digest because of their nutrient content, how each of them have different digestion times, and how a lot of people tend to also drink too much water on this diet, so that can cause, you know, very loose bowel movements. And another thing I've noticed is if you eat cooked fat or rendered fat, that can also cause bowel movements. What I recommend is don't drink water like an hour before or like an hour or two after your meal. And also, if you're having a problem digesting certain fats, initially when you eat any food, you'll have bowel problems until your stomach adjusts. But if you eat that food for 2 or 3 days and your stomach still hasn't adjusted, you have to fix something. Either you shouldn't be eating that food, or you should be preparing it in a different way. Whether maybe it's the problem you shouldn't be cooking it, you should be eating it raw, maybe you shouldn't be adding certain seasonings to it, or especially in the case of maybe you're drinking too much water during your meal, before your meal, or after your meal. Another thing is electrolytes. You know, if you're over-salting your food, that can cause you to want to drink too much water and bloat and cause bowel problems. You know, if you supplement magnesium for electrolytes, magnesium citrate is known as magnesium shitrate because it makes your bowel movements very loose and quick. It's a laxative. But as I just said, with any adjusting to any diet, any food. Listen, I was eating beef every day for years, and then I switched to my beef purveyor and I bought some New Zealand beef, and I never had New Zealand beef before, and I got a little stomach ache and liquid bowel movement. And after a day or two, my stomach adjusted to the New Zealand beef. But you got to keep in mind, even if you're eating the same exact food, if you get it from a different farm, a different place of the different location, all of those things come in factors too. But if you do have loose bowel movements or inconsistencies 2 to 3 days after starting a diet, really analyze the food. And honestly, I've had times where I've literally never eaten certain foods, and as long as they're animal foods, I tend to digest them just fine. Another big thing is to not overeat them. If you eat a small amount of a food you've never had before, it'll go through your digestive system, your stomach will adjust to it, and then you start incorporating larger and larger amounts until, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times after you eat it, then you could eat a large amount of it. But if you just go balls to the wall and eat 2 pounds of liver when you've never eaten liver before, you're probably not going to be in for a good time. So I think I've touched on everything in regards to bowel movements that people might be concerned about. In regards to fiber in your digestive system, the role fiber has and those bulky foods has is what I mentioned earlier. The reason most people use the bathroom is because they consume enough food to push it out. Because some food, as I said, when you mix foods, some food wants to stay there, some food should be further up in the digestive system. When you consume fibrous foods and large volumes of food, it pushes it through and makes room for new food. So unfortunately, the way that most people only have clean bowel movements when consuming a lot of plant foods is just constantly jamming food down, your throat to push it through. The natural way is to consume non-inflammatory foods in proper amounts that you can digest well, and then foods will move accordingly as they should through your digestive system.